Daniel, my husband, was adjusting his cufflinks in our Atlanta hotel suite when he received a call from a contact saved as wife. "I miss you. Call when she's asleep," after a moment of hesitation. I replied for him, "She's out for the night. Come by." A cold silence swallowed the room before the sound even faded. In the dim golden glow of our luxury suite at the St. Regis Atlanta, with a bottle of champagne still sweating on ice from our wedding reception downstairs. My perfect American wedding night fractured like a thin layer of glass. The smell of warm, buttered dinner rolls drifted from the room service tray by the window, mixing with the sweet scent of roses from my bouquet, which I had carefully laid across a deep emerald velvet armchair outside. The distant hum of traffic along Peachtree Road rose and fell like white noise, the soundtrack of Atlanta nightlife. Inside, the air conditioning let out a soft thump as it cycled on, sending a faint chill across the cool marble floors. My white wedding dress hung over the armchair, its tall layers cascading down like a frozen waterfall, and for the first time that night, it looked less like a symbol of love and more like a prop in a play I hadn't agreed to be in. I didn't scream, didn't snatch the phone out of his hands, didn't ask him who she was. My heart rate stayed almost eerily steady, as if my body understood something before my mind fully caught up. Daniel, on the other hand, stiffened as he glanced down at the screen. Even from where I sat on the edge of the bed in my satin robe, I could see the way his shoulders tensed under the tailored charcoal suit he had worn to say his vows just a few hours earlier. His fingers hovered above the phone like he wasn't sure whether to pick it up or pretend it hadn't happened. I stood up slowly, the satin fabric of my robe whispering against my skin, and crossed the marble floor. The creme brulee we had ordered as a celebratory dessert had gone cold next to the empty champagne flutes, its sugar crust dull and cracked. The sweet, heavy aroma that had felt romantic an hour ago now seemed cloying, almost nauseating. I brushed my fingers lightly along the smooth Carrara marble countertop where his iPhone 15 Pro had landed. When he set it down, without making a show of it, I slid the phone into the pocket of my robe with the same casualness someone might use to tidy clutter off a table. Daniel didn't even notice. He was staring at the wall as if he could rewind time by sheer force of will. We had just closed on a 3-story townhouse in Buckhead, a $985.0 white brick beauty with black-framed windows, a chef's kitchen with a massive island and a rooftop deck that looked out over the Atlanta skyline. Dual incomes, strong credit, solid careers in corporate America. He worked as a senior financial consultant for a big insurance company headquartered in Buckhead. I was a senior project manager at a tech consulting firm with clients up and down the East Coast. We were the couple people pointed to on Instagram and said, "That's the dream, that's goals, that's the American life done right." But if there's one thing I've learned as a black woman in corporate America, it's this: the prettier the picture, the easier it is to hide the cracks behind it. I walked back to the bed and sat down, running my hand over the top layer of the quilt folded at the foot. It was our wedding quilt, custom made by a woman my aunt swore was the best artisan at the craft fair in all of Georgia. Deep navy, blues, crimson reds, and creamy whites stitched together in star patterns, meant to symbolize strength, loyalty, and the American dream. As my fingers traced the seams, a thought settled in the back of my mind. This quilt would mean something later, maybe not tonight, but eventually. In my pocket, the phone vibrated again. I slipped my hand inside the satin and felt the smooth glass against my palm before pulling it out, angled so only I could see. A new message glowed on the screen. "I'm 5 minutes away. Same spot as always. Can't wait to see you." There it was, not a fluke, not a wrong number, not a weird joke. She was on her way here to him. On our wedding night, talking like they had a routine. Same spot as always. She called herself wife, and she was confident enough to do it without explanation. That meant history. That meant familiarity. That meant this wasn't new. The roses from my bouquet smelled almost too sweet now, their perfume thickening the air around me. The soft thrum of the air conditioning became a steady heartbeat in the background. Somewhere in the hallway, a cart rattled past as hotel staff moved between rooms. A part of my brain cataloged every sound, every smell, every detail. As if I were building a case instead of living a moment. I could have confronted him right then. I could have held up the phone and demanded answers, ruined the carefully curated perfection of our wedding night with screaming and tears. Maybe another woman would have done that, and I wouldn't have blamed her if she did. But that isn't who I am. I've spent years working with data, timelines, and documentation. In my world, nothing matters unless it can hold up under scrutiny. That mindset doesn't just disappear when your heart gets cracked in half, emotion gets you killed. In stories like this, strategy saves you. Daniel was talking now, his voice low and a little too bright, something about how perfect the ceremony had been, how stunning I looked, how he couldn't believe we were officially husband and wife. His words floated around me like background noise from a TV left on in another room. I heard him, but I wasn't listening. My focus was on the phone in my lap, on the contact name at the top of the screen, on the familiar blue and gray of a message. Wife, no first name, no last name. Just wife. I tapped the contact info, eyes moving quickly. No photo, no additional details, just a number, but the thread of messages stretched back weeks, maybe months. I saw quick flashes as I scrolled: little hearts, good morning texts, I love yous, plans for dinner, talk about an apartment. She sounded like someone who believed she belonged to him, or worse, that he belonged to her. I glanced up at him, standing by the window now, the city lights reflecting faintly on the glass behind him. He looked like the same man I had promised to love in front of our families and friends that afternoon. Same height, same smile, same softly brushed waves in his hair, same confident posture, but there was a new detail I couldn't ignore: a tension in his jaw, just barely visible. Like he was waiting for something to explode and praying it wouldn't. He didn't know that the bomb had already gone off. He just hadn't heard it yet. I laid the phone face down on the nightstand and gave him a small smile. The kind wives in commercials give their husbands right before offering them a perfectly plated dinner. Calm, supportive, unbothered. You okay? I asked, my voice smooth, steady. Yeah, he said too quickly, tugging at his cufflinks again. Just tired. It's been a long day, I nodded. As if that explanation made sense. As if my stomach hadn't twisted into a knot the moment that voicemail preview played. The truth was, I wasn't tired at all. I was awake in a way I hadn't been in years. Some quiet, calculating part of me had snapped into focus, organizing facts, building timelines, arranging questions I would need answers to. We had just closed on the Buckhead townhouse 2 weeks ago. The down payment came from both our savings and a $40,000 contribution from my parents. We merged bank accounts at Chase. We met with our financial planner. We talked about kids, about schools, about remodeling the kitchen into an open concept showpiece that would make our friends jealous. We were, by all appearances, building a future together. So why was there another woman calling herself his wife on my wedding night? That question didn't just sit in my mind, it rooted itself there. I knew that if I tried to drag the truth out of him tonight, he'd minimize, deflect, maybe cry. He would say I misunderstood. He would call it a joke. He would claim she was someone from his past who hadn't moved on. He would twist the story until I doubted my own eyes. No. If I was going to take down the life he'd built on lies, I needed more than anger. I needed evidence. As I slipped under the high thread count sheets, the cool cotton pressing against my skin, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. This story would not end with me as the victim. Not in Atlanta, not in Buckhead, not in the home I helped pay for with my own hard-earned dollars. I turned off the bedside lamp and let the room sink into shadows, listening to the soft whoosh of the air vent and the faint clink of the ice settling in the champagne bucket beside me. Daniel's breathing slowly evened out as he drifted toward sleep, blissfully unaware that the woman lying inches away from him had already shifted from bride to strategist. In the darkness, eyes open, staring at the faint outline of my dress draped over the armchair, I repeated the question to myself one more time, letting it sharpen into a blade. Why would another woman call herself his wife on my wedding night? I didn't sleep that night. Daniel drifted off within minutes, breathing heavily beside me, but sleep stayed far from my eyes instead. I stared at the faint digital glow of the hotel alarm clock on the nightstand. Its soft ticking created a steady rhythm in the room, almost like a metronome guiding my thoughts. Every few minutes, the iPhone in my pocket buzzed again. The other woman, the mysterious wife, sending messages I refused to open just yet. The cold glow from the screen seeped through the satin fabric when I pressed my hand against it, almost like the phone itself was reminding me that I needed to stay alert. Daniel, my husband, was adjusting his cufflinks in our Atlanta hotel suite when he received a call from a contact saved as wife. "I miss you. Call when she's asleep," after a moment of hesitation. I replied for him, "She's out for the night. Come by." A cold silence swallowed the room before the sound even faded. In the dim golden glow of our luxury suite at the St. Regis Atlanta, with a bottle of champagne still sweating on ice from our wedding reception downstairs. My perfect American wedding night fractured like a thin layer of glass. The smell of warm buttered dinner rolls drifted from the room service tray by the window, mixing with the sweet scent of roses from my bouquet, which I had carefully laid across a deep emerald velvet armchair outside. The distant hum of traffic along Peachtree Road rose and fell like white noise, the soundtrack of Atlanta nightlife. Inside, the air conditioning let out a soft thump as it cycled on, sending a faint chill across the cool marble floors. My white wedding dress hung over the armchair, its tall layers cascading down like a frozen waterfall, and for the first time that night, it looked less like a symbol of love and more like a prop in a play I hadn't agreed to be in. I didn't scream, didn't snatch the phone out of his hands, didn't ask him who she was. My heart rate stayed almost eerily steady, as if my body understood something before my mind fully caught up. Daniel, on the other hand, stiffened as he glanced down at the screen. Even from where I sat on the edge of the bed in my satin robe, I could see the way his shoulders tensed under the tailored charcoal suit he had worn to say his vows just a few hours earlier. His fingers hovered above the phone like he wasn't sure whether to pick it up or pretend it hadn't happened. I stood up slowly, the satin fabric of my robe whispering against my skin, and crossed the marble floor. The creme brulee we had ordered as a celebratory dessert had gone cold next to the empty champagne flutes, its sugar crust dull and cracked. The sweet, heavy aroma that had felt romantic an hour ago now seemed cloying, almost nauseating. I brushed my fingers lightly along the smooth Carrara marble countertop where his iPhone 15 Pro had landed. When he set it down, without making a show of it, I slid the phone into the pocket of my robe with the same casualness someone might use to tidy clutter off a table. Daniel didn't even notice. He was staring at the wall as if he could rewind time by sheer force of will. We had just closed on a 3-story townhouse in Buckhead, a $985.0 white brick beauty with black-framed windows, a chef's kitchen with a massive island and a rooftop deck that looked out over the Atlanta skyline. Dual incomes, strong credit, solid careers in corporate America. He worked as a senior financial consultant for a big insurance company headquartered in Buckhead. I was a senior project manager at a tech consulting firm with clients up and down the East Coast. We were the couple people pointed to on Instagram and said, "That's the dream, that's goals, that's the American life done right." But if there's one thing I've learned as a black woman in corporate America, it's this: the prettier the picture, the easier it is to hide the cracks behind it. I walked back to the bed and sat down, running my hand over the top layer of the quilt folded at the foot. It was our wedding quilt, custom made by a woman my aunt swore was the best artisan at the craft fair in all of Georgia. Deep navy, blues, crimson reds, and creamy whites stitched together in star patterns, meant to symbolize strength, loyalty, and the American dream. As my fingers traced the seams, a thought settled in the back of my mind. This quilt would mean something later, maybe not tonight, but eventually. In my pocket, the phone vibrated again. I slipped my hand inside the satin and felt the smooth glass against my palm before pulling it out, angled so only I could see. A new message glowed on the screen. "I'm 5 minutes away. Same spot as always. Can't wait to see you." There it was, not a fluke, not a wrong number, not a weird joke. She was on her way here to him. On our wedding night, talking like they had a routine. Same spot as always. She called herself wife, and she was confident enough to do it without explanation. That meant history. That meant familiarity. That meant this wasn't new. The roses from my bouquet smelled almost too sweet now, their perfume thickening the air around me. The soft thrum of the air conditioning became a steady heartbeat in the background. Somewhere in the hallway, a cart rattled past as hotel staff moved between rooms. A part of my brain cataloged every sound, every smell, every detail. As if I were building a case instead of living a moment. I could have confronted him right then. I could have held up the phone and demanded answers, ruined the carefully curated perfection of our wedding night with screaming and tears. Maybe another woman would have done that, and I wouldn't have blamed her if she did. But that isn't who I am. I've spent years working with data, timelines, and documentation. In my world, nothing matters unless it can hold up under scrutiny. That mindset doesn't just disappear when your heart gets cracked in half, emotion gets you killed. In stories like this, strategy saves you. Daniel was talking now, his voice low and a little too bright, something about how perfect the ceremony had been, how stunning I looked, how he couldn't believe we were officially husband and wife. His words floated around me like background noise from a TV left on in another room. I heard him, but I wasn't listening. My focus was on the phone in my lap, on the contact name at the top of the screen, on the familiar blue and gray of a message. Wife, no first name, no last name. Just wife. I tapped the contact info, eyes moving quickly. No photo, no additional details, just a number, but the thread of messages stretched back weeks, maybe months. I saw quick flashes as I scrolled: little hearts, good morning texts, I love yous, plans for dinner, talk about an apartment. She sounded like someone who believed she belonged to him, or worse, that he belonged to her. I glanced up at him, standing by the window now, the city lights reflecting faintly on the glass behind him. He looked like the same man I had promised to love in front of our families and friends that afternoon. Same height, same smile, same softly brushed waves in his hair, same confident posture, but there was a new detail I couldn't ignore: a tension in his jaw, just barely visible. Like he was waiting for something to explode and praying it wouldn't. He didn't know that the bomb had already gone off. He just hadn't heard it yet. I laid the phone face down on the nightstand and gave him a small smile. The kind wives in commercials give their husbands right before offering them a perfectly plated dinner. Calm, supportive, unbothered. You okay? I asked, my voice smooth, steady. Yeah, he said too quickly, tugging at his cufflinks again. Just tired. It's been a long day, I nodded. As if that explanation made sense. As if my stomach hadn't twisted into a knot the moment that voicemail preview played. The truth was, I wasn't tired at all. I was awake in a way I hadn't been in years. Some quiet, calculating part of me had snapped into focus, organizing facts, building timelines, arranging questions I would need answers to. We had just closed on the Buckhead townhouse 2 weeks ago. The down payment came from both our savings and a $40,000 contribution from my parents. We merged bank accounts at Chase. We met with our financial planner. We talked about kids, about schools, about remodeling the kitchen into an open concept showpiece that would make our friends jealous. We were, by all appearances, building a future together. So why was there another woman calling herself his wife on my wedding night? That question didn't just sit in my mind, it rooted itself there. I knew that if I tried to drag the truth out of him tonight, he'd minimize, deflect, maybe cry. He would say I misunderstood. He would call it a joke. He would claim she was someone from his past who hadn't moved on. He would twist the story until I doubted my own eyes. No. If I was going to take down the life he'd built on lies, I needed more than anger. I needed evidence. As I slipped under the high thread count sheets, the cool cotton pressing against my skin, I knew one thing with absolute clarity. This story would not end with me as the victim. Not in Atlanta, not in Buckhead, not in the home I helped pay for with my own hard-earned dollars. I turned off the bedside lamp and let the room sink into shadows, listening to the soft whoosh of the air vent and the faint clink of the ice settling in the champagne bucket beside me. Daniel's breathing slowly evened out as he drifted toward sleep, blissfully unaware that the woman lying inches away from him had already shifted from bride to strategist. In the darkness, eyes open, staring at the faint outline of my dress draped over the armchair, I repeated the question to myself one more time, letting it sharpen into a blade. Why would another woman call herself his wife on my wedding night? I didn't sleep that night. Daniel drifted off within minutes, breathing heavily beside me, but sleep stayed far from my eyes instead. I stared at the faint digital glow of the hotel alarm clock on the nightstand. Its soft ticking created a steady rhythm in the room, almost like a metronome guiding my thoughts. Every few minutes, the iPhone in my pocket buzzed again. The other woman, the mysterious wife, sending messages I refused to open just yet. The cold glow from the screen seeped through the satin fabric when I pressed my hand against it, almost like the phone itself was reminding me that I needed to stay alert. I've always believed that I'm the type of woman who learns from disasters instead of falling apart in them. Maybe it came from years of working in corporate America, climbing a ladder in a world that demands women to be composed even when they're furious. Or maybe it was something older, something inherited, like the way my grandmother used to say, "This is America, baby. We don't cry until the work is done." So I held onto that energy as I lay there, wide awake, planning my next move while Daniel slept like a man without secrets. Around 3 o'clock a.m., I finally slipped out of bed and walked across the cool marble floor to the living room area of the suite. I turned on the lamp with the lowest setting, casting a warm amber glow across the space. I reached for the small silver tray on the coffee table, where my Starbucks caramel macchiato from earlier had gone lukewarm. I took a sip anyway. The sweetness grounded me. Caffeine wasn't going to help at that hour. But the taste reminded me of who I was, someone who handled life with steadiness and clarity, not impulsiveness. I unlocked Daniel's iPhone using Face ID while he was still asleep. The passcode fallback was our wedding date, which felt like a cruel kind of irony. Each swipe through his call logs made my stomach sink, but not with heartbreak. What I felt was data analysis mode, the same mode I used on client accounts. The same calm precision I used in every major project deadline. There were dozens of calls between him and her, some lasting minutes, others stretching past an hour. The most recent ones were almost daily conversations. Some were video calls. I took screenshots of everything, sending them to a secure folder on my iPad and then to a cloud drive he didn't know I had access to. As I saved each screenshot, the glow from the screen highlighted the quilt folded neatly on the bed. Our quilt, the symbol of the marriage I thought I had entered into. The symbol of our American dream stitched into precise patterns at that craft fair in Blue Ridge, where a sweet elderly woman had told us that quilts were promises you could touch. That quilt would look so perfect in the Buckhead townhouse, draped across the sofa in the living room if our marriage had been real. I found myself staring at that quilt for a long moment, remembering the day Daniel and I met. It was on a 4th of July afternoon in Piedmont Park. The sky was so bright it almost hurt to look at, and the smell of grilled burgers, charcoal, and sun-warmed grass filled the air. He was with a group of co-workers near the volleyball courts, laughing and showing off the American flag apron he'd bought last minute from Target. I'd been holding a plate with a hot dog smothered in ketchup and mustard when he bumped into me accidentally on purpose and apologized with a smile that could melt butter. By the time the fireworks went off that evening, we were sitting on a picnic blanket talking like we'd known each other for years. Our relationship evolved like a perfect American romance montage: fall apple picking trips in North Georgia, hot cocoa nights in December, autumn wedding planning sessions with pumpkin decor samples spread across our dining table. We tasted apple cider flights like critics and picked out our cake flavor like two people building a future. I thought we were building that future together. Turns out, I was building alone while he was multitasking. Marriages. By sunrise, I had moved from gathering screenshots to deeper research. I sat at the desk, logged into my MacBook, and opened Georgia's public marriage records portal. Very few people know that marriage licenses in the state are public filings accessible through georgia.gov, but I knew. I typed in his full name, then I sat back, crossing my arms, waiting for the system to load. It didn't take long. When the results appeared, my breath didn't hitch. I didn't gasp. I simply leaned closer. There it was. A marriage license, issued in Fulton County, dated the 8th of May 2021, 2 years before Daniel even met me. And the status: active, not dissolved, not voided, not annulled. Active. I stared at the screen, the caramel macchiato cooling further in my hand. The digital clock on the nightstand clicked to 5:12 a.m. My mind sharpened into a perfect line of strategy. Everything became clearer, not easier, but clearer. This wasn't some messy affair. This wasn't even cheating in the typical sense. This was bigamy, a crime in the state of Georgia, a destroy-your-life kind of mistake, a legally punishable, career-ending, reputation-shattering offense. And he had the audacity to fall asleep next to me like he wasn't carrying a felony on his shoulders. I closed the laptop and took a long, slow breath. My plan was forming, not rushed, not emotional, but meticulously layered. Evidence first, documentation second, behavior tracking third, confrontation last. In America, wives who scream get ignored. Wives who document get justice. Before sunrise, I grabbed Daniel's phone once more and checked his Venmo history. Payments to a woman labeled only with a heart emoji. Payments for dinner, rent, and utilities. I exported the history. I sent it to my secure folder. I checked his Zillow saved listings: apartments in Dallas, small ones, 2-bedroom layouts. I checked his LinkedIn connections. Her name wasn't there, but a few suspicious overlaps were. By 7:30 a.m., I had showered, dressed, and slipped quietly out of the suite. Daniel still slept peacefully, oblivious. I drove my 2020 Toyota RAV through Midtown Atlanta, hands steady on the steering wheel as the morning sun rose over the skyline. The air outside smelled like fresh bread from local bakeries and car exhaust, and my Starbucks caramel macchiato warmed the cuckolder beside me. I didn't marry a man. One married a lie. And lies can be unraveled. Emotion gets you killed in stories like this. Strategy saves you. By the time I parked outside our Buckhead townhouse, the last piece of the morning's plan solidified in my mind. I would collect every breadcrumb he had left behind. I would turn my heartbreak into a roadmap, and before long, the truth would unfold in full color. The final confirmation came when I refreshed the Georgia.gov page again, sitting in my driveway. The marriage license was still there, still active, still mocking me. Daniel wasn't just a cheater. He was already married to someone else. And now, I knew exactly where to start. By the time Daniel's alarm went off the next morning, I had already been awake for hours, running through the growing list of facts I needed to gather. He showered, shaved, and dressed in that smooth, efficient way he always did on workdays, completely unaware that I had spent the entire night uncovering the first layer of a double life he thought he'd hidden. When he kissed my forehead and said he'd be home early to make up for last night, I smiled like a woman in love. Humans underestimate the power of a well-timed smile. It's camouflage at its finest. As soon as his BMW pulled out of our Peachtree Heights West driveway, I locked the door behind him and let the mask slide off. My breath released slowly, and I stood still for a moment, letting the quiet of our Buckhead townhouse settle around me. The house smelled faintly of the lemon-scented kitchen cleaner I had used before the wedding. It mixed with the morning air seeping in from the sliding doors that opened to our small patio. The hum of the dishwasher running from the night before filled the open-concept kitchen with a low, steady sound that wrapped around the silence like a blanket. Normally, that sound made the house feel warm and lived in. Today, it felt like white noise behind a mission. I padded across the soft beige carpet, my steps sinking into the plush fibers as I headed toward Daniel's office. This room had always been his space, a glass desk facing the front window, a wall of framed certificates from his alma mater, and 3 tidy stacks of color-coded folders he guarded like treasures. He liked his workspace organized. That worked beautifully in my favor, because organized men leave predictable trails. I opened the door quietly, not because anyone was home, but because secrecy sharpens the senses. The faint scent of his cologne lingered in the air. Tom Ford Outwood, warm and smoky. The morning sunlight filtered through the blinds, casting thin stripes across the West Elm desk where his laptop sat charging. For a moment, I simply looked at the room the way an analyst looks at a dataset: structure, pattern, what belonged, what didn't. My fingers skimmed the desk surface until I reached the bottom drawer, the one he usually kept locked. I tried the handle. It slid open with almost comical ease. For a man juggling 2 entire marriages, he hadn't thought much about physical security. Inside were multiple envelopes, some addressed to him, others clearly redirected. One tore open too easily in my hands, revealing a statement addressed to a woman named Jessica H. at an apartment complex in Dallas, Texas. That was the first concrete piece linking his secret marriage to a location. I pulled out more mail, utilities, insurance papers, a lease agreement. All of them pointed to that Dallas address. My heart didn't race and my breathing didn't change. I was running on strategic calm, the same quiet composure that got me through high-stakes client meetings at work. These documents didn't hurt, they confirmed. I carried the stack of papers into the kitchen and spread them out across the marble island. The hum of the dishwasher was louder in that part of the house, vibrating softly through the cabinetry. I laid the Dallas apartment lease next to the Wells Fargo statements I'd emailed to myself from Daniel's phone earlier. The deposits made sense, his salary from the insurance company. The withdrawals did not. There was a $1,500 transfer dated on the 15th of each month to a recipient, simply labeled rent. The memo line was even worse. For her place. Her, not roommate, not tenant, not cousin. Her. I opened Daniel's Wells Fargo account on his laptop using the same password he used for everything, our original Zillow search date. I'd chosen that date when we first started house hunting together, thinking it symbolized the beginning of our shared future. Now, it unlocked proof that the future I believed in had never existed. Transaction after transaction confirmed it. Grocery stores in Dallas, Uber rides from the Dallas North Tollway, ATM withdrawals near an apartment building in Plano, All of it bolstered the story, unfolding piece by piece. Once I finished collecting screenshots, PDFs, and copies of every bank and lease document, I plugged in my portable printer and began printing each page. The rhythmic whir of the printer blended with the dishwasher's hum, creating a strange domestic soundtrack that accompanied the collapse of my marriage. The smell of lemon cleaner mixed with warm paper and faint printer ink. I placed every sheet into a thick manila folder I bought months ago during a Target run. On the tab, I wrote in neat black marker, "For court use only." The words made a strange kind of music inside my mind, sharp, precise, definitive. I wasn't ready for confrontation, but the courtroom wasn't far from my thoughts anymore. In America, the truth means nothing unless it is documented, and I was documenting everything. Once the evidence folder was tucked safely away, I walked quietly into the living room, picked up my iPhone, and opened the Find My iPhone app. Daniel had always been careless with his Apple ID. He reused the same few passwords for everything. There it was, a second device labeled personal, a second phone he had never told me about. I followed the pulsing green icon on the map. The location wasn't in Atlanta. It wasn't anywhere near Georgia. It was in Dallas, Texas. I zoomed in closer. A specific apartment complex appeared, the same one on the envelopes I found in his office drawer. My lips curved slightly, not in happiness but in confirmation. The trail wasn't just circumstantial. It was geographic. It was financial. It was personal. To strengthen my case, I activated the voice memo app on my iPhone and placed it discreetly under the throw blanket on our crate and barrel bar stool by the kitchen island. I intended to record every conversation we had moving forward, not because I was paranoid, but because documentation is a woman's strongest shield in situations like this. If he lied again, it would be captured. If he slipped, it would be saved. If he admitted anything, it would become evidence. Round noon, as I continued sorting through the folder, a new calendar notification popped up on Daniel's laptop. A flight itinerary forwarded from Delta Airlines. Departure Atlanta to Dallas. Date Friday. Purpose work travel, work travel. Of course, he wasn't even trying to hide it. I stared at the screen, absorbing the final puzzle piece that solidified the next phase of my plan. I didn't slam the laptop shut. I didn't cry, and I didn't tremble. I simply opened a new browser tab, clicked on Delta's website, and purchased a ticket on the exact same flight. If he wanted to juggle two wives, I whispered to myself, he should have picked a woman who didn't know how to juggle data. That was the moment my trap fully locked into place. There was no turning back. The flight from Atlanta to Dallas felt longer than it actually was. Maybe because I spent the entire time rehearsing the neutrality I needed to maintain, the calm I needed to display, and the ice I needed to carry in my chest. When we landed at Dallas, Fort Worth International Airport, the Texas heat slapped me in the face the moment I stepped outside. The air was heavier than Atlanta's humidity, thicker, warmer, almost sticky, and as I walked toward my rental car, I felt the sun radiate off the concrete in waves. It suited my mood perfectly. A boiling world outside, a frozen one inside. I drove north, passing long stretches of highway, clusters of chain restaurants, and sprawling office parks, until I approached Plano. The neighborhood Daniel's second life existed in looked nothing like where he lived with me in Buckhead. There, our townhouse was surrounded by manicured lawns and luxury cars. Here, the gated community in Plano had a calmer, more suburban charm. Rows of neatly trimmed hedges, American flags planted beside mailboxes, and joggers moving rhythmically down the sidewalks. A place built for stability. A place built for families. The entrance gate had a ring security panel mounted beside it. I typed in the code I'd seen on one of Jessica's utility bills. Yes, Daniel had saved everything, and the gate slid open without hesitation. As I drove slowly through, I noticed how quiet the streets were. Children's bikes lay on lawns. A golden retriever barked in the distance, and a delivery driver was dropping off a stack of brown Amazon boxes to doors down. It looked like a picture from a suburban lifestyle brochure, the kind of place where no one would suspect a man of living double lives. I parked in front of a cream brick house with black shutters. Her house. The sun beat down hard on the driveway, and I felt the heat through the soles of my flats as I walked toward the door, carrying a Whole Foods welcome pie the way a good southern neighbor might. My heart didn't race. My hands didn't shake. If anything, I felt an eerie sense of clarity. I pressed the ring doorbell. A soft chime echoed inside. A moment later, the door swung open. She stood there, Jessica. Early 30s maybe. Blonde hair pulled into a messy ponytail. Face fresh, no makeup, She wore black Lululemon leggings and an oversized gray Target hoodie. She looked like she had just rolled out of bed and poured all her remaining energy into pretending that nothing in her life was wrong. When she saw me, confusion clouded her expression, but she forced a smile out of politeness. Her voice was cautious but warm when she said, "Hi, can I help you?" I returned the same kind of smile a wolf might give a lamb before stepping closer. "Hi," I said smoothly. "I'm new to the area. Thought I'd bring a welcome pie to a neighbor." I held up the Whole Foods box like a peace offering. "I hope I'm not interrupting." Her eyes widened in surprised gratitude, and she stepped aside without hesitation. Texas hospitality people open doors for strangers because they believe the best in them. I took advantage of it. "Oh, that's so sweet," she said, leading me inside. "Come in. It's humid out there." The moment I stepped into her home, the rush of crisp, cold air from the AC hit me. It contrasted sharply with the Texas heat radiating off the driveway only seconds earlier. The living room smelled faintly of freshly brewed Folgers coffee, the kind that lingers in the air long after the pot is empty. Her home was cozy, surprisingly beautiful in a simple way. Open kitchen, light wood floors, granite countertops, farmhouse sink, and a West Elm-looking dining table. The kind of American home built on a desire for safety and comfort. And somewhere in these walls, Daniel lived another life. I placed the pie box gently on the counter, admiring her decor with what I made sure looked like genuine interest. "Your home is lovely," I said, letting admiration color my voice. "I love the backsplash tile. Did you pick it yourself?" Her face brightened simple, automatic pride. "Yeah, Daniel and I remodeled it last year. He has really good taste." I let that sentence float in the air before responding. I didn't rush. I didn't react. I just repeated her words in my mind. "Daniel and I men who take interest in home decor are rare," I said softly. "You're lucky." My tone wasn't sarcastic, but it wasn't warm either. It was neutral in a way that invites reflection. She poured herself a cup of coffee and offered me one. I declined politely, but as she sipped from her mug, her hands trembled slightly. Not much, just enough for me to notice. Her instincts were waking up, even if she didn't understand why. So she said carefully, "You just moved to the neighborhood?" I took in a slow breath. This was the moment the psychological chess match began. "I'm actually not from here," I said. "My husband works in consulting. He comes to Dallas pretty often. Sometimes he works late, sometimes very late." Her eyes flickered barely, but enough to confirm she'd heard something familiar in that sentence. I watched her process it, her mind picking up on the implication before she consciously realized it. I walked toward the couch and gestured at the pie. "You should try it," I said warmly. "It's the mixed berry one. Whole Foods makes the best crust. Want a slice?" She hesitated a beat too long. That was confirmation number 2. She was nervous. I cut a slice and placed it in front of her. The fork clinked softly against the plate. She took a small bite, more out of politeness than appetite. Her voice cracked slightly when she asked, "So, your husband works late a lot?" "Oh yes," I said, leaning gently against the counter. "A lot of nights, a lot of trips. Dallas is practically his second home." The color drained just slightly from her cheeks, just like Daniel's had when his phone rang on my wedding night. Women don't just share men, they share clues. I looked around the living room casually and spotted a framed wedding photo on a decorative shelf. They looked younger in it, standing under an arch decorated with eucalyptus leaves and ivory roses. The date at the bottom was printed in gold script .05/08/20/1. My stomach didn't twist. It settled. Jessica noticed me looking. Her voice softened, almost fond as she said, "That was our wedding day. 3 years ago next month. 3 years ago next month." Meanwhile, my wedding night had been last night. I gave her a small, tight smile. Not cruel, not smug, just controlled. A smile that said, "I know exactly what I'm looking at." "Well, congratulations," I said gently. "It must be nice, being married so long." She nodded, unaware of the trap closing around her. "We've had ups and downs, but Daniel is. He's a good man." I didn't blink. "Your husband," I said quietly, "and my husband seemed to be the same man." She froze. The mug in her hand trembled so hard that a drop of coffee spilled onto the granite counter. Her face went blank, not shocked, not angry, just blank, like her brain had unplugged for a moment. She stared at me, her breath shallow, her eyes glassy. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "What did you say?" I didn't raise my voice. I didn't repeat myself in a harsher tone. I simply said the same sentence again with devastating clarity. "Your husband and my husband are the same man." Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes darted toward the wedding photo on the shelf as if it might defend her, as if the memory of the day could rewrite the present. She took a step backward, bracing herself on the counter. The cold air from the AC hit her too hard, her whole body shivered. I didn't move. I gave her space. Sometimes silence is a scalpel. When she finally managed to speak, her voice cracked. What do you mean? I stepped to the shelf and gently picked up the wedding photo. You married him in May of 2021. I held her gaze. I married him yesterday. Her knees buckled just slightly, and she grabbed the edge of the farmhouse sink for support. Her breathing turned rough, her chest rising and falling like a woman who had been punched but refused to fall. She whispered, No, that's not possible. I set the frame back on the shelf and looked at her softly, not with pity but with truth. I wish it weren't. Her eyes filled with tears she fought to keep in place. And then suddenly, like a switch flipped, she shook her head, marched to the drawer by the fridge, and pulled out a folder. She yanked out her marriage certificate, dated the 8th of May 2021, embossed with the seal of the state of Texas. See, she said in a stubborn, breaking voice. We're married. We've always been married, I nodded. I know, she stared at me. Why I died. But how could he? Her voice fell apart. I didn't finish the sentence for her. She needed the next moment for herself. She stepped closer to me, her voice trembling as she whispered, Who are you? I took a slow breath, let it fill my lungs, and said quietly, I'm his other wife. In the silence that followed, the truth settled like dust in a sunlit room, visible, undeniable, ugly. Jessica didn't speak for a long moment. She just stared at me with wide, hollow eyes, her fingers still gripping the edge of the farmhouse sink like it was the only stable thing in her world. I watched her chest rise and fall in uneven breaths, the cold air from the AC blowing across her face, making her look even paler under the kitchen's soft recessed lighting. She was a woman experiencing the second before impact, the breath you take before the truth crushes you completely. I knew the feeling. I had lived it on my wedding night. Finally, she whispered, Show me proof. I intend to, I replied, my voice steady as steel. But I need you to breathe first. She let out a shaky exhale and nodded, wiping at her face with the sleeve of her Target hoodie. Her hands trembled so badly I wondered if she'd dropped the mug still sitting on the counter. I walked past her to the kitchen island and pulled the manila folder from my tote bag. It was thick, swollen with documents, receipts, printed screenshots, and timelines methodically sorted at the FedEx office printing station I stopped at before coming here. There's something poetic about printing evidence at a FedEx in Texas to expose a marriage that was illegal in the first place. America is a country that runs on paperwork, and Daniel had no idea how much paper I'd collected. When I set the folder on the granite countertop, Jessica flinched. She recognized the weight of it emotionally, legally, psychologically. I flipped the tab open and began laying everything out, piece by damning piece. Let's start with the basics, I said calmly. Money. I placed the Chase bank statements in front of her first. Each page was highlighted, annotated, organized chronologically. She leaned closer, her ponytail falling over her shoulder, eyes scanning the lines. Her breath started shaking again. These are Daniel's Chase statements, I explained. 6 months worth. Look here, I tapped the highlighted transfers. On the 15th of every month, a $1,500 payment labeled rent. Her brow furrowed. We don't pay rent. We own this house, I know, I said quietly. That's the point. She swallowed hard, eyes darting from one transfer to the next. I moved to the next set of documents, the hotel receipts. And here, I continued, sliding the printed Hilton Dallas room confirmations toward her. These are his Hilton receipts. For stays in the last 3 months, 2 nights each, charged to his personal card. I placed the receipts on the counter. Each one had the Hilton logo, the Dallas address, and Daniel's name printed clearly in the corner. Jessica pressed her lips together, her fingers creeping toward the papers, as if she needed to steady herself with something real. Next came the AMC theater stubs. These, I said, are movie tickets, purchased in Dallas. 2 seats each time. Friday nights, premium seating. He's not watching these alone. I set them in a neat line across the counter. The dates and showtimes were printed bold at the top, evidence of nights when he had supposedly been stuck in Atlanta traffic or working late. Jessica blinked hard, her eyes glistening. I didn't stop. I pulled out the Ruth's Chris Steakhouse receipts, $280 for dinner, dated last month. I'm sure you know this place, I said. Dallas location. She nodded silently, looking at the line item for 2 entrees, 2 drinks, and a dessert. The receipt clearly stated date night special -2. And then slowly, painfully, I laid down the printed Zelle transfer records. These, I said, are payments he sent from Wells Fargo, to someone labeled Jessica H. Her head snapped up, horror flashing across her face. That's me, I know, I said. He was paying rent for your apartment, paying utilities, paying for groceries, using money from the same Wells Fargo account he shares with me. Her eyes closed like she was trying to unhear the truth already laid bare. And lastly, I said, the call logs. I pulled out the screenshots, pages and pages of them captured on his iPhone 15 Pro. The calls were time-stamped, cataloged, neatly printed. Morning calls, night calls, lunchtime calls, long calls, missed calls. VOICEMAILS. At the sight of her own number repeated dozens of times across multiple days, Jessica covered her mouth with her hand. Her shoulders began to shake, and a small sob escaped her before she could contain it. She backed into a bar stool and sank down slowly, pressing her elbows onto the countertop and burying her face in her hands. For a moment, the only sound in the room was her quiet, broken breathing and the hum of the air conditioner trying to cool a house burning with betrayal. I stood across from her, steady, composed. She needed to break apart now so she could understand what came next. After a minute, she lifted her head and looked at me with red, swollen eyes. Why would he do this to us? Her voice cracked on us, and something in that word struck me. Because she didn't say me, she said us. She was already shifting, already understanding the truth. We were not rivals. We were victims of the same man, because men like Daniel, I said carefully, underestimate two things, women and paper trails. Jessica let out a broken laugh, shaky, bitter, defeated. So what now? She whispered. What do we even do with this? Instead of answering immediately, I reached into my tote bag again and pulled out one more object, Daniel's second iPhone. The one he kept hidden under a different Apple ID. The one I had tracked from Atlanta to Dallas. The one he used for the life he hid with her. Jessica stared at it as though it were alive. That's his other phone. Yes, I said. This is the phone he didn't want either of us to find. Her eyes narrowed, anger beginning to simmer under the shock. Open it, I shook my head. No need. I set the phone on the center of her kitchen island. The cool granite reflected the sleek black screen. Then I stepped to the stove, grabbed a Williams Sonoma cast iron skillet from the rack, and placed its heavy weight in my hands. Jessica's breath caught. What are you? This phone, I said calmly, represents his lies, his arrogance, his belief that we are too stupid to see the truth sitting right in front of us. Her eyes widened. She didn't stop me. She let me continue. I raised the skillet high over my head and slammed it down onto the phone with full force. Crack. The sound echoed through the house, a loud, violent shattering that felt like a verdict. The screen exploded into shards beneath the weight of the pan. Jessica jumped at the sound, her hand flying to her chest. The scent of microwaved mac and cheese drifted from the kitchen corner where she had heated lunch earlier, but the smell was overwhelmed by the raw intensity in the room. Something inside her finally snapped in the best possible way. Her trembling hands steadied, her breathing straightened, and her eyes hardened. She walked slowly toward the phone, staring at it like it was the corpse of something evil. I can't believe he did this, she whispered. I gave him everything. I trusted him. I moved closer and placed a hand gently on the counter between us. You weren't his first wife, I said softly. You were just his first mistake. Her head lifted. Our eyes met, and for the first time since I stepped into her home, I saw a glimmer of something powerful in her expression, anger, clarity, strength. I continued, and I was his second mistake. She nodded slowly. Then he's about to learn what it feels like to lose everything. We spent the next hour organizing the evidence into a new system, her folder, my folder, a shared digital drive. The hum of the air kept the room cool, but the tension between us grew warmer with purpose. As we sorted papers, Jessica recounted small things she had overlooked, excuses Daniel had given, lies that now clicked into place. Our pain aligned into partnership. To women who had never met, suddenly connected by betrayal and truth. When we finished, I opened my laptop and pulled up the Texas divorce statute regarding bigamy. We read it together. We didn't speak. We just absorbed the reality of what he'd done. In Texas, bigamy is a felony. In Georgia, too. And in the corporate world, it is a career death sentence. Outside, the sound of traffic on the Dallas North Tollway filtered faintly through the windows. Inside, the air between us charged with a new, shared resolve. Finally, a car engine rumbled outside. A door slammed. Footsteps approached. Jessica and I exchanged a look, a silent agreement. A pact forged in truth. Then the Ring doorbell chimed. Daniel had arrived, and this time, he wasn't walking into a lie he controlled. He was walking into the truth we built together. The Ring doorbell chimed with a bright, almost cheerful sound completely wrong for the weight of what waited behind the door. Jessica froze beside the kitchen island, her hands tightening around the back of the bar stool, while I stood still, my palms pressed softly against the cool granite countertop. The house felt colder than it had moments before, the AC blowing directly onto my skin, creating a sharp contrast to the Texas heat that had followed me from Atlanta. We looked at each other, silently acknowledging that this moment, the moment we had both unknowingly been waiting for, had finally arrived. The door opened. Daniel stepped inside with the casual ease of a man coming home from an errand, holding a Chick-fil-A bag in one hand and a medium-sized sweet tea in the other. The familiar scent of waffle fries and fried chicken drifted into the house, warm and greasy and unmistakable. He took 2 steps forward before he noticed me. When he did, the entire atmosphere shifted. His face went pale, his mouth falling open, the Chick-fil-A bag swinging slightly from his hand. "Well, what are you doing here?" he stammered, looking between me and Jessica like he'd walked into a nightmare. I straightened, lifting my chin the slightest inch. Jessica moved closer, her gaze locked on him with a coldness I hadn't expected from her earlier trembling state. He set the bag down slowly on the counter, the paper crinkling under his fingers. "I could ask you the same thing," I said, my voice calm and unhurried. "But I already know the answer." He opened his mouth, but I raised a hand just like I had the night before in our hotel suite. And just like then, he fell silent immediately. Control is a strange thing. Once you learn how easily a man gives it up, you never forget. I stepped toward him, stopping on the other side of the kitchen island. "Let me walk you through something," I said. "Because you seem confused." Daniel swallowed hard. "Baby, don't," I said, and the word cut through the air like a knife. His shoulders stiffened. Jessica moved behind me, standing tall, her posture straightening with every breath she took. I rested my fingers lightly on the manila folder we had organized earlier. The weight of the evidence felt solid, certain, irrefutable. "You married Jessica," I began, "on May 8, 2021. A legally binding, state-recognized marriage." I watched his expression shift: panic, denial, calculation, all in the span of a heartbeat. "Then you met me on July 4, 2023. Piedmont Park, fireworks, patriotic small talk. You told me you were single, ambitious, ready for a family." Jessica folded her arms tightly, her jaw trembling with restrained fury. "You dated us both," I continued, my tone coldly informative, as though giving a quarterly report. "For months. You saved Dallas addresses in your Zillow favorites. You used your Wells Fargo account to send $1,500 a month in rent while living in my Buckhead townhouse. You visited Dallas under the excuse of work. You stayed at the Hilton. You took her to the movies. You ate dinner at Ruth's Chris. And you kept a second iPhone so you could separate your lives." Jessica moved suddenly. She grabbed the wedding photo from the shelf, the one dated the 8th of May 2021, and threw it at his feet, so hard the frame cracked on impact. The sound echoed across the hardwood like a gunshot. Daniel jumped backward. "You liar," she whispered, her voice trembling. "You lied about everything." Daniel raised his hands defensively, eyes wide. "We were on a break," he blurted. "We weren't doing well. We had a rough year." "You were never on a break," Jessica snapped. "Don't insult me." He shifted his gaze to me, desperation creeping into his expression. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen. You're misunderstanding. I love you, both of you." "Stop." My voice was ice. "This isn't about love. This is about fraud." He flinched hard at the word. I crossed my arms over my chest, keeping my tone steady. "You know what the penalty for bigamy is in Texas? Or in Georgia?" "Of course you don't. You were too busy juggling lies to read the law." His lips parted, but no words came out. Jessica moved beside me, and for the first time she looked like she was finally recognizing her own strength. She wasn't shaking anymore. She wasn't sobbing. She was standing like a woman who had just realized she deserved far more than he'd ever given her. Daniel ran a hand over his face, suddenly looking 5 years older. "Can we just talk? Please, all of us." "Let's sit down." "No," I said. "We're done sitting." His voice cracked as he said, "Please, baby. You know I love you." I tilted my head slightly. "Daniel, please don't embarrass yourself. The only thing you were faithful to was lying." He closed his eyes like the sentence physically hit him. When he opened them again, he took a small step forward, but Jessica stepped in front of me like a shield. "Get out," she said, her voice low and sharp. Now he blinked in disbelief. "Jess," she pointed at the door, "this is my house, and you are no longer welcome." For a moment he didn't move. Then he saw something in her expression, something unfamiliar, something powerful, and realized she wasn't bluffing. Neither was I. The two women he thought he could manipulate were standing united, staring him down. I'm not leaving. He tried again. You are, I said softly. And you're doing it now. Jessica's voice joined mine. Get out. The finality of our combined demand echoed through the living room. Daniel looked around helplessly, his gaze flicking between us. The cracked photo frame on the floor, the shattered remains of his second iPhone on the kitchen island. His lies were no longer hidden. They were physical piles of evidence, staring back at him. With trembling hands, he grabbed the Chick-fil-A bag and sweet tea, as if holding onto them might give him some sense of comfort. He backed toward the door slowly, his shoulders hunched, his breathing ragged. When he stepped outside, the Texas heat slammed into him like an exclamation point. The door shut behind him with a deep, reverberating thud. Neither Jessica nor I said anything for a moment. We just stood there, two women joined by pain but strengthened by truth. Finally, she let out a long, unsteady breath. I can't believe he thought he could get away with this. Oh, he thought he was invincible, I replied. But men like Daniel always forget that women talk. She nodded slowly, absorbing the truth in that sentence. After a few more minutes, I picked up my bag and headed to the door. I have a flight to catch, I said quietly. But this isn't over. Not legally, not professionally. Jessica walked me out to the driveway. The sun sat high in the sky, blazing against the pavement. My Tesla Model Y rental gleamed under the Texas sun. I got in, turned on the AC, and rolled down the windows long enough for the hot air to rush out. As I pulled out of the gated community, I connected my phone to Apple CarPlay. Taylor Swift's Vigilante shit blasted through the speakers the moment the car sensed. Wind whipped through the windows as I accelerated down the road, passing the highway signs pointing toward DFW Airport. The music, the speed, the sudden freedom, it all washed over me like gasoline meeting fire. My phone buzzed in the cup holder. A new email notification appeared on the screen. From DEPT at Fortune500insurance.com. Subject, emergency contact discrepancy review. I glanced twice to be sure I hadn't imagined it. Daniel listed both wives as emergency contacts. His employer had noticed. I smiled, not out of joy but out of the satisfaction of a trap finally snapping shut. By the time my plane landed back in Atlanta, my pulse had finally steadied, not because the shock had faded, but because clarity had replaced it. The sky above Hartsfield-Jackson was streaked with the soft peach tones that always made me think of home. My city, my battleground, my territory, and now the place where Daniel's carefully woven life was about to collapse legally, professionally, socially. As I walked through the terminal toward the parking garage, I sipped a Dunkin' iced coffee and mentally outlined the next 48 hours. Revenge isn't rage. Revenge is paperwork, precision, and timing. And in America, timing is everything. Daniel had built his double life across to states, to women, to homes, and he'd used my money, my trust, and my name to support it. That made what came next not just personal, but procedural. I reached my 2020 Toyota RAV4, tossed my carry-on in the back seat, and pulled out my phone. The moment the engine started, I heard the satisfying click, click, click of notifications loading on the screen. One stood out immediately. The email I'd received in Texas flagged as urgent. I opened it again before leaving the parking lot. Emergency contact discrepancy review initiating HR-level investigation required. Verification of marital status. Smiled, because nothing destroys a man in corporate America faster than an HR-level investigation. It was time to accelerate the process. The next morning, I drove to Harper and Lane Family Law, one of the most respected divorce firms in Atlanta. The office sat in a sleek glass building in Buckhead, the kind of place where the lobby smells faintly of money, ambition, and eucalyptus diffusers. I sat across from attorney Valerie Lane herself, a woman known for dismantling husbands like she collected trophies. She wore a tailored charcoal suit, a diamond bracelet, and the calm expression of someone who had seen every kind of betrayal imaginable. Valerie adjusted her glasses as she flipped through the folder I brought. You gathered all this in 2 days? She asked, eyebrows lifting. Yes, I replied, sipping my second Dunkin' coffee of the morning. I wanted to make your job easier. Her lips curved into an approving smile. You didn't just make my job easier, she said, you made it winnable. For the next hour, the only sounds in her office were the sliding of papers across her polished oak desk, the soft tapping of her paralegal's keyboard, and the smooth click of her Mont Blanc pen as she annotated every piece of evidence. I watched as she created timelines, highlighted financial inconsistencies, marked potential violations of Georgia and Texas law, and circled the records proving Daniel's second marriage. "You have grounds for everything," Valerie said finally. "Bigamy, fraud, misuse of marital funds, emotional damages, marital asset theft, and since you live in Georgia, you'll likely receive the townhouse as part of equitable distribution." "Good," I said. "He won't need it where he's going." Valerie leaned back. "You're calm." "I decided a long time ago," I replied, "that emotion gets you nowhere in an American courtroom." Her smile widened. "You're going to do very well in this process." After leaving her office, I parked outside a nearby Starbucks to prepare the second phase of my plan. While sipping a hot caramel macchiato, I opened my laptop and drafted my formal HR complaint to Daniel's employer, an insurance company headquartered in Buckhead, right next to Lenox Square Mall. I wrote it in clean, crisp, corporate language, each sentence backed by evidence. Subject: formal complaint, code of conduct violation, misuse of funds, and fraud investigation. Requestee attached: Chase bank statements showing rent payments, Wells Fargo transfer, Shilton receipts, Dollars UD, Lydia Shell transaction, Sam Stubb screenshots of to active Maria Jessa timeline of his trips to Texas. The clicking of my keyboard became rhythmic, almost soothing, each keystroke sealing his fate. When I finally pressed send, I felt a quiet, powerful satisfaction settle in my chest. It wasn't joy, it wasn't relief, it was justice beginning its descent. I leaned back in my seat and whispered, "You didn't just betray me, Daniel. You betrayed the wrong woman." Over the next 3 days, everything unfolded exactly as I knew it would. On Wednesday morning, Daniel arrived at his Buckhead office building wearing the same navy suit he'd worn on our first date. He probably thought dressing well would save him. It didn't. At 10:15 a.m., HR called him into a glass-walled conference room. By 10:25, the head of human resources, the compliance manager, and corporate counsel were seated across from him with printed copies of my complaint. By 10:32, according to someone I knew inside the company, Daniel's face had gone gray, and by 10:45, two building security officers escorted him out the front doors, past dozens of employees heading out for lunch. His employee badge was deactivated, his company email was disabled, his office access revoked. For someone in corporate America, this was the equivalent of a public execution. His LinkedIn profile lit up like a Christmas tree, co-workers whispering in comments, vague posts from employees hinting at ethical issues and internal misconduct. It didn't take long for the Atlanta professional circle to learn the truth. News travels fast in a city built on reputations, and nothing spreads faster than scandal. While his career was collapsing in Buckhead, Jessica filed for divorce in Texas. She texted me a photo of the paperwork stamped by the county clerk. I sent back a simple message. "Good, you deserve better." Meanwhile, my attorney froze our joint assets. I logged into our Chase account and watched in real time as the numbers shifted. Joint checking frozen, joint savings frozen, shared credit line locked. Within hours, I received confirmation that the Buckhead townhouse title had been secured under legal hold. He couldn't borrow against it, sell it, or access it. It was a victory wrapped in legal precision. Later that evening, I met my friend Monica, a pediatric surgeon at Emory Midtown, at a cozy rooftop bar overlooking the Atlanta skyline. The sunset cast a warm pink glow over the city, and Monica's face softened as she listened to everything that had happened. "You know," she said, swirling her wine, "you handled this the way a woman handles a scalpel, sharp, clean, no hesitation." I laughed, feeling the tension finally begin to leave my shoulders. "I just didn't want to be the kind of woman who let someone write her story for her." Monica raised her glass. "Here's to writing your own chapters." We toasted under the warm Atlanta sky, the breeze carrying the scent of grilled seafood from the restaurant below and the faint hum of traffic from Peachtree Street. For the first time since my wedding night, I felt like my lungs finally had room to expand. The next morning, I woke early and drove downtown to meet Valerie again. As we prepared additional filings, the familiar sound of papers sliding across her desk filled the room. The legal machine was in motion. Danielle's downfall was not dramatic, it was systematic, professional, irreversible. That afternoon, I received a final email from Daniel's employer: employment termination notice, reason, code of conduct violation, loss of trust, fraud investigation, outcome effective immediately. Stared at the bold letters for several long seconds. The man who had once been proud of his corner office, his six-figure salary, and his polished LinkedIn endorsements had become an unemployed felon in progress in just 4 days. Now came the last step of this chapter. The date stamped on the Fulton County Courthouse filing confirmation was bold and sharp, the official date for our proceedings. It was real, final, and public. The morning of the hearing, I stood in front of my full-length mirror wearing a fitted navy suit that hugged my waist perfectly. My hair was sleek. My heels were sharp. My expression was calm, unshakable. I took one last sip of my iced latte, grabbed my file folder, and stepped out the door. As I walked toward the courthouse entrance, the sun caught the glass facade, reflecting the city behind me. Each step echoed like a drumbeat of finality. This was the moment I had been building toward. This was the ending Daniel never saw coming. The Fulton County Superior Courthouse always felt colder than it looked. The marble floors, the echo of footsteps down the long hallways, the stiff benches lining the waiting area, it all carried the heavy seriousness of final decisions. That morning, I walked through its double doors with a sense of calm I hadn't felt in months. The fitted navy suit I'd chosen felt like armor, the subtle scent of my fresh ground coffee drifting from the to-go cup in my hand grounding me as I approached the courtroom. Sunlight streamed through the large windows, warming the hallway just enough to soften the moment. Daniel arrived late, rushing in with papers halfway shoved into a folder, his shirt wrinkled, his hair uncombed. It was a stark contrast to the polished man he once pretended to be behind him. His court-appointed attorney walked briskly, flipping through documents Daniel should have reviewed weeks ago. Jessica was already seated inside, wearing a simple blouse and jeans, her posture straight, her face composed. When our eyes met, she nodded a quiet acknowledgement of a long, terrible journey we'd survived. The judge entered with the confident stride of someone who'd seen far worse cases and far more complicated lives. She adjusted her glasses, looked over both attorneys, then glanced at Daniel. Her tone was firm, clipped, and mercilessly clear. After reviewing the documentation provided by both parties, she said, and considering the evidence of marital misconduct, asset misuse, and bigamy under Georgia law, the court rules as follows. The words hung in the air, heavy and absolute. My attorney stood beside me, hands folded neatly on the wooden table, her expression neutral but confident. She had seen this outcome from the beginning. The Buckhead townhouse, the judge continued, will be awarded solely to the petitioner. Additionally, the petitioner will receive $70,000 in compensation for emotional damages, misappropriated marital funds, and legal inconvenience. Daniel's shoulders sagged. He rubbed his forehead, his fingers trembling at the edges. The judge continued as if she had not seen his deteriorating state. Mr. Wilson will also be responsible for the petitioner's attorney fees. She paused for effect. In full. A soft murmur spread through the courtroom. Even Jessica inhaled sharply. Paying attorney fees in a high-profile divorce case in Fulton County was no small burden. My lawyer didn't hide her satisfaction. She simply nodded and wrote the ruling down carefully. The judge turned to Jessica next, regarding the first marriage. Given the timeline and evidence submitted, Mrs. Wilson is granted immediate divorce approval. Furthermore, she will receive 50% of Mr. Wilson's retirement account and savings plan. Daniel exhaled shakily. His credit score, already battered by frozen accounts and missed card payments, was about to collapse entirely under the weight of attorney fees, asset divisions, and the consequences of 2 legal dissolutions. Court is adjourned. The gavel struck, crisp and final. As we all stood to leave, I felt an unspoken shift inside me. The tension, the fear, the grief, every piece of emotional wreckage Daniel had left in his wake lifted like fog under the Georgia sun. Outside the courthouse, the city felt warm and alive. People moved along the sidewalks, hurrying to work, sipping lattes, talking on phones. Life kept going, and so had I. 2 weeks later, after all the paperwork had settled and court orders were finalized, I moved into my new condo in Midtown Atlanta. A sleek, modern high-rise overlooking Piedmont Park, with floor-to-ceiling windows that caught the afternoon sunlight just right. The first morning I woke there, I stood on the balcony, letting the city breeze brush against my skin. The hum of distant traffic blended with the soft chatter of people walking dogs below. The sun warmed my face, and for the first time since my wedding night, I felt truly free. The Buckhead townhouse was officially mine. But I didn't want to live in a place where every wall remembered a lie. Selling it through a Realtor.com listing brought in enough extra money to cushion my new life, and my attorney made sure Daniel couldn't touch a dollar of it. Work shifted too. My firm had been impressed by my composure throughout the entire ordeal. My focus hadn't wavered. My projects had been flawless. My leadership had sharpened. During a Monday morning meeting, my manager closed the conference room door, looked across the table at me, and said, "We're promoting you to senior project manager, effective immediately." I nodded calmly, even though my heart fluttered in excitement. My salary jumped. My responsibilities grew. My career, once weighed down by a man who lived off my stability, now floated with possibility. Weekends became my sanctuary. I built new routines: Saturday mornings at Ponce City Market, sipping iced lattes while wandering through local artisan stands, picking up candles, succulents, handmade jewelry. I rediscovered softness in small things: sunlight through midtown windows, the sound of my Tesla charging in the garage, the luxury of a quiet evening spent reading on my couch with no lies lurking beneath the silence. One evening, returning from a grocery run at Whole Foods, I found an email sitting in my inbox. The sender's name wasn't familiar. Subject: "You saved me without knowing it," from Emily C. Nashville. Tini opened it immediately. "Hi, I know you don't know me, but I felt like I needed to write this. I dated Daniel for 6 months last year. He told me he was divorced. He told me he was rebuilding. He told me I was special. Everything you went through, everything you exposed saved me from going any deeper into his lies. I saw your court filing through someone we both know, and I just wanted to say, thank you. You helped a stranger escape a man who would have ruined her. I hope your new life is everything you deserve." I reread the message 3 times, each time absorbing a little more of the unexpected impact of my fight. My story hadn't just freed me, it had saved someone else, too. I leaned back on the balcony railing, letting the city breeze carry away the last of the lingering heaviness. Below me, the lights of Midtown flickered on, one by one, like little reminders of every choice I had made to step back into my own power. "My story didn't end when Daniel betrayed me," I whispered. "It began when I chose myself. I knew then that I would never shrink again, never settle, never doubt my strength." I looked out over Atlanta, my city, my home, my new beginning, and felt the truth settle into my bones. If you've ever been lied to, betrayed, or underestimated, come sit with me. I have a story for you. I am Naomi. I'm 35 years old. I'm single, independent, and happy. Did you like the story? And which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you like the story, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments on the story. On the screen you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story, with love and respect.